Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp. Now firstly I want to shout out MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer, who helped me finally fix my frame rate software and taught me a few things, which will probably come up in this episode. Today we're going to have a look at the Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 games on the Nintendo Switch 2 to see how they perform.
Yep, so these again are games that are brute forcing from Switch 1 onto Switch 2, and we have recently covered Resi 5 and 6, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So there'll be a card to that in the top right hand corner if you want to give that a watch. But how do Revelations 1 and 2 play? Well, let's find out. So let's look at the games first a little bit before we look at performance. So Resident Evil Revelations released, I believe it was 2012 on the 3DS, and it came out in the same year, ironically, as Resi 6. And the reason I say ironically is because they're very different in tone. One, being Revelations, was Capcom's attempt to go back to the roots of the series in terms of cramped corridors, slow, methodic gameplay, rationing your resources, and trying to ramp up the fear, whereas 6 went bombastic and large and loud, and it was interesting to see them both release in the same year. They obviously had different teams behind them. Revelations 2 released, I think it was 2015. I played it on the 360. That's where I first played it. And it attempted to expand on Revelations' premise, introduce new characters or reintroduce characters from the series previously. In my opinion, it kind of took the series back again a little bit.
Yeah.
They seem to always find themselves between a rock and a hard place where every time they go back to horror, they feel that they've outgrown the horror genre and want to go back into action a bit. So whereas this is horror based, I just felt the characters weren't as strong and it didn't do what the first game did for me, at least.
So this one used the proprietary MT framework engine, which was previously seen in Devil May Cry 4 and Lost Planet 2. Played the first Lost Planet, it was a decent game at the time.
I played that one, yeah.
And yeah, it was their proprietary engine that they were kind of tailoring for the 3DS, and then they brought this across to the Switch and we experienced improved visuals, we had better frame rates. But it's funny, isn't it? Hindsight is an interesting thing, and now that we go back to the actual Switch 1 performance, we can see there were actually a number of issues.
Moving on to the Switch, it aimed for 60. It didn't hit it as often as we would have liked, and we'll show some graphs now of exactly what the performance was like. Generally, would you say between mid-40s to 50s?
Yeah, it seemed to hover around 40s to 50s.
Yeah.
Never really sits at 60 for long.
Yeah.
And you really notice, because we've been playing the Switch 2 version, then playing the Switch 1 version, the difference that the frame pacing makes. And as I said, alluded to at the start of the video, we will talk a little bit about that.
In terms of the resolution was fixed, so you won't see any real difference. This is quite evident early on. There's a part, like a jump scare, where a dead body falls down and kind of hits you in the face almost, and you can see that the textures on that are quite low, and this applies to both the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 version, obviously, because there is no boost in resolution.
Yeah, they are native though, so you've got 1080p docked and 720p handheld. Obviously, if you're playing handheld on the Switch 2, it has to upscale that, so you might actually see a slightly worse image quality, especially if you're coming from the OLED. So jumping over to the Nintendo Switch 2 then, thank you MVG, he helped me set the frame rate software up properly. And I will say at this point, looking straight at the frame times, we have a proper 33.3 on the screen, and then it's half of that because it's obviously a 60 FPS game now.
Yes, absolutely right. So running at 60, a flawless 60 as far as we saw, and that means that the frame pacing is 16.7, I believe it is, which again is what you want if you're running a game at 60.
Feels like we're in Resident Evil, something just ran across the roof. Yeah, exactly. And thank you to the people in the comments who were trying to help me, I think, learn a little bit about this, you know, with the old, if it's 30 frames per second, it should be 33.3. And what you just said.
You halve the frame pacing, yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely. The lower the number, the better, basically.
Yeah, and it should now reflect that on screen as well. So the performance is silky smooth, and the difference it makes to things like the gyro aiming, you can't really show that through this format.
Yeah, now how much of that is solely down to the improvement in frame rate, we don't know. It could just be the technology behind the gyro is that much better on Switch 2, but there is a noticeable difference. When you're trying to play with the gyro activated on Switch 1, you get that classic drift. I know it affects some people more than others, and I seem to have been particularly unlucky with it because you were using my Switch to play, but it was terrible. Trying to aim with it is so difficult, whereas on the Switch 2, it's so much easier and makes for such a better experience.
Yeah, it is flawless. Someone mentioned in the comments yesterday that the Switch 2 Joy-Con uses an accelerometer as well, which could be the reason that it feels different, it feels better. It just does. Like, I've used so much gyro over the years. For me, this just feels perfect.
Absolutely.
Now, while we did say that the game doesn't use dynamic resolution scaling, let's just have a side-by-side so that you can see any differences at all. There shouldn't be any, but let's have a look.
Let's move on to Resident Evil Revelations 2 then, and in terms of the Switch 1 version, as I said, this wasn't a 3DS game to begin with. You're looking at quite similar numbers when it comes to frame rates and what have you.
Yeah, exactly the same, some drops again. This one potentially has slightly better visuals, so on Switch 1 those drops may be a little lower, but still it's trying to hit 60 and not always achieving it. Well, not achieving it for most of the time. But they had the same targets for the resolution, as obviously this is the same engine, so native in docked and handheld you won't see a change in visual quality.
Yeah, as Mark said though, this I suppose is a better looking game. It's hard to judge sometimes because I like the aesthetic better of the first game, but objectively looking at the textures and what have you, this does look better. Let's compare this to the Switch 2 version, and or Switch 1 game running on the Switch 2 is probably a better way of wording it.
Yeah, absolutely. On Switch 2, once again, we have a much better experience. 60 frames per second, 16.7, whatever it is, milliseconds. Really does feel ideal in that regard.
Yeah, for sure. It means that, you know, when you're twirling that camera around or doing your quick turns and all that, it just keeps things nice and smooth. None of those kind of jolting moments where you almost feel like your stomach jumps into your throat for a second, as you do get with games that have poor frame rates or frame pacing. And yeah, no, flawless 60 is exactly what you want in a game like this.
As they use the same engine, we thought we would test the split screen performance in this one. It should be the same in both. And once again, we're looking at 60 frames per second. Very smooth indeed. I didn't see any hitches at all. The only problem with that mode is just how bad the second character was.
Yeah, again, moving away from performance, just talking about the game, but this is what I never liked about Revelations 2, is they introduced these support characters that were exactly that. They were there to support. So when you play with two human characters, one just gets a real bum deal, doesn't they?
Oh, they really do.
Walk around carrying a torch about and stuff.
I was literally just shining on doors and stuff and at zombies' faces, feeling pretty damn useless.
Exactly.
Until I got eaten.
Yeah, that's it.
You might be surprised by how much difference it makes when you're hands-on.
That's right. So that's another couple of games then looked at in terms of the Switch 1 versions playing on the Switch 2, Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2. Let us know what you think down below. What do you think of these games aside from performance? I'd be interested to see what we're thinking on these two.
Lovely stuff. Thank you to our Patreons, our members, all of you that enjoy the content. We did announce the winner of the Switch 2. It was Melania Pina, so congratulations to her. That will be going across to her very shortly, and we'll get a little community post hopefully with her like clutching the console or something.
Yeah, that would be nice for sure. Don't forget, if you're looking for eShop credit to pick any games up on your Switch 1 or your Switch 2, you can use our website switchup.gg to get your eShop cards, and doing so will get you 5% of your purchase price back as cash back. There are also links down there to places such as Play Asia. This game, Revelations, didn't get a physical release in Europe. It did in the US and Asian regions, so it might be one you want to have a look for on Play Asia if it's still on there. And using our links and codes gets you 5% off of your order price.
For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya.